Alright, my name is Emmanuel Lapasi, and today we are going to be learning introduction into web design. So for today's classes, we're going to focus on HTML, CSS, and a little bit of Bootstrap. Alright, now HTML is a programming language which stands for Hypertext Markup Language. Markup language. Now, HTML consists of a set of markup tags. That helps in building your websites or web pages. Now, we're going to be looking at how these tags are arranged. Now, basically, HTML tags are arranged in the following order. Okay, HTML documents are described by HTML tags. Each HTML tag describes different document contents. Now, we have the document markup tags arranged like this: doc type, HTML. Then you have the HTML tag. You have the head. You have the title. You close the head tag. You have the body close, and finally you have the HTML close. Now these tags are arranged. If you looking at these tags now, you discover that there are some tags that have opening tags and closing tags. For example, if you have a tag like this, HTML and HTML. Now this tag, there are two tags here, right? This is called the open tag. This is called the close tag. Right? This is called the open tag, this is called the close tag. And in between the tag is what we call the document or the tag content. Right? It's called the tag content. So you have the open tag, the close tag, and then the tag content in the middle. So from these tags they have their functions, the functions they perform. The first doc type, HTML, describes the document type as HTML. Document type HTML describes the document type as HTML. The HTML open tag describes the entire document as HTML document. Right? Now this document type has to do with what it tells the web browser to view the element as to view that particular document as. It views it as HTML. That's what's called document type. Right? So once you've sent it to your web browser to view it on your web browser, you have the document type. It will show document type as HTML. So the browser will now read that particular document as HTML document. Right? Now this HTML tag, if you notice, all these other tags are embedded in the HTML tag. Right? Look at where the HTML tag is opening here and it's closing here. So every other thing you have is inside the HTML tag. So since they are all inside the HTML tag, the HTML tag describes the entire document as what? As HTML document. Right? The head is a tag that describes or provides information about the document. Alright? It provides information about the document, or it can also be called meta tag. It can also be called a meta tag. The head can also be called a meta tag. Anything when you talk about meta has to do with data about data. Data about data, meta. So in the head listing, in the head tag, it gives you information about that particular document. For example, titles and information about a particular document, right? So where you have a title, for example, my first website. My first website. By the time you view this particular page on the browser, where you have the browser tab, right? Where you have the browser tab, you know what browser tab is all about. Then you see something like this, my first website, as the document title of that particular HTML. So this one tells you about the document title. The title element gives you the document title. While the body has to do with the document content. Everything about the document content, everything that has to do with the view of that website is contained in the body. Alright. So the body is basically where you have the view of that particular website you are trying to create using HTML. So apart from the head just carrying the title elements, there are other elements it also carries. Elements like the style elements, the script elements, right? The base elements, right? The link elements, and so many other elements are contained in the head elements. Now let's move on to the next tutorial. HTML editors. How do we use HTML? How is HTML being used? HTML, for you to be able to use HTML, you must have what we call a text editor. Now the text editor is where your HTML tags are written. The text editor is where your HTML tags are written. And once you've written your HTML tags in your text editor, then you can view them on your web browser. So examples of text editors that are used for HTML are Notepad, Notepad++, Sublime Text, Visual Studio Code, basically, Atom, and so many other text editors that have been coming out of recent. So there are so many text editors that can be used. Apart from these ones, there are so many other text editors that can be used. Alright. So the next thing we have here are some of the basic examples of HTML elements, some of the basic examples of HTML tags. Right? So the next examples we have, basic examples of HTML tags. So we have one, the header tag, the heading elements, which comprises of H1 tags to H6 tags. Some of these things will be familiar to you, right? H1 tags to H6 tags. So these are called the heading elements. So H1 is the largest of all these tags, right? H1 is the largest. It has the biggest font size. It has the biggest font size and it's bolder than H6. H6 has the smallest font size. Alright? So you have it as H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, and H6. So we have it like this, H1 to H6. So H1 is biggest, followed by H2, followed by H3, H4, H5, and H6, respectively. Now we have another tag called the HTML links. The HTML links are represented by the A tags. Okay, HTML links are represented by the A tag and accompanied by what we call an attribute called the href. Href attributes. All links in HTML are represented by the A tag and accompanied by the href attributes. So we have the href attributes. The href attributes has to do with the hypertext reference or the reference point of each link. For example, I want to link my website to facebook.com. Now, how do I link my website to facebook.com? For me to link my website to facebook.com, I'll first of all insert the A tag like this. The A tag, I'll have a text reference it to in between the quotation mark. I put my link, which is http://www.facebook.com. I close this, and then in between the A tag, open and close tag. So for us to insert the link, we're going to input it in between the A open and the A close. That's the A link and the A close. So how do we do that? We're going to do it like this: facebook.com, then in between it we put a text. Now a link can be a text, an image, object, right? That gives you a reference to another web page. So in between it, we're going to write Facebook, and then you close what? The A tag. And by the time you view this particular tag on the web browser, you discover that you're going to have just Facebook with the following characteristics. First, the Facebook will be underlined because it's a link, to show it's a link. Secondly, when you move your cursor to the Facebook, it turns to a pointer. Alright, it changes to a pointer. Thirdly, the Facebook becomes blue in color. The text color becomes blue. And then that's where you have a link, which means this particular link has not been opened or has not been clicked on. So it's going to be blue in color. After, when it changes to A active, the color turns to purple, which means the link has been clicked on, or the link is active, right? The color changes to purple. I think you can see examples of that on your web browser, on your search engine. When you search for a particular item on the internet, you select a particular option, and then you discover that you have some of these characteristics coming out. So this helps to identify what a link is all about. Right? The next element we have is the paragraph element. The paragraph element, which is represented by the P tag. The paragraph element is represented by the P tag. P open and P close. And then in between it you have the content element. Now the paragraph element is also a block element. The paragraph element is a block element. That's the display of this particular kind of element. The paragraph is a block element, right? Which means it spans from one end of the screen to the other. Why a link tag is called an inline element? Why? Because it only occupies the space around the text, and after that you can add other elements on the same line with that particular element. Whereas the paragraph element is a block element. Another element we have is image element. The image element, or the image tag, ing, is represented by ing. Image element is represented by ing. So when you have something like this, ing. Now the image element is an open element. Why? Because it does not have a closing tag. An image element is an open element because it doesn't have a closing tag, and it only contains attributes. The image element only contains attributes. It doesn't have a content apart from attributes. Okay. So how do you call images on your web browser using HTML? We have an attribute called the src, also called the source attribute. The src attribute called the source attribute. So from this src attribute, you now give your image description or your image location. For example, you have /aaa.jpg. Alright. Now this dot we have here has to do with the image folder. Okay, let's have it like this: images slash aaa.jpg. So when you have something like this, it tells you that this image aaa.jpg is found in images folder, which is in the same folder with this particular document you are calling from. So for you to have an image called from a different folder, you have to specify the folder location for you to be able to call the image. One more thing, when calling images, we must ensure that the name of the image tallies with what it actually is in the image folder, and then the image abbreviation, right? Image abbreviation, JPG, for example, or PNG, or GIF, or the image formats, right? PNG, JPG, or GIF must be the same. So if you have an image named in JPG and you call it as a PNG file, it's called that image will not display on your web browser. Next we have is, we're going to look at nested elements. We're going to look at HTML nested elements. Now what do we mean by nested elements? Elements can be nested in HTML, which means an element can contain an element. Alright? An element can contain an element. For a very typical example is what you have here in the head, in the HTML. Right? This is a typical example of a nested element. So you have HTML, you have the head element inside the HTML, you have the title inside the head, and then you have the body inside the HTML. So this is an example of a perfectly nested HTML element. For example, in the body element, I can start to insert. Remember we said the body element has to do with the visible part of your website. It displays the visible part of the website, which the user can see. Alright? Which the user can see. It's all being displayed in the body. So we have the body element. You insert, let's say, you insert a paragraph tag, P tag. I am a boy. You close your paragraph. You insert H2. This is a heading. You close H2. Now, because it is HTML, there can be room for nested elements like this: body carrying paragraph H and H2. Now, there's also another example of nested elements where you have elements and classes being called in a div. Elements being called in a div. For example, I have a div, call it my container div, several other divs that comes into it. For example, I have a div, alright, give it a class, container, and add another div, give it a class, let's say row, have another div, give it a class, call md2. And I then call an element here, h2. This is my header. Alright. Now we have something like this. Now if you look at this, we have three divs opened: the container div, the row div, and the column div. So how do we do that? For us to close it, we're going to close this div 3 times to show that we have ended this particular thing. The first div we're going to close is this particular div called the column div. That's the first div we close here. Div. The next div we're going to close this row div. And the final div we're going to close is what? Is the container div. So it's called that we've successfully nested an element. successfully inserted an element inside an element. So that's what this if elements is all about. Okay, the next the end tags are very important because without the end tags, the system or the browser will not read these HTML codes the way they are supposed to be read. So we need to always take note of inserting the end tag. Next is HTML attributes. We're going to look at what attributes are all about. What is an attribute? An attribute, of course, is a very simple terminology. It describes something about a particular thing. Right? That's what an attribute is all about. We talk about attributes. Attributes tells more about a particular element. Take for instance, you want to talk about the attributes of God. You know, you mean what God is made of. That's what attributes are all about. So in HTML, all HTML elements have attributes, okay? Which means all HTML elements have descriptions. They have something that characterizes them. They have attributes. And attributes provide additional information about an element, as well as attributes are always specified in the start tag. Finally, attribute comes in name and value pairs. For example, we have this is the div. This is the div, which is an HTML element. It's a container, a box that houses elements. And then you now give it a class. So an example of an attribute here is called what? The class. Alright? This class is an example of attribute. This class is an example of an attribute. So when we talk about a class, now in this class you specify the value. This is the name and then the value. The value is my first. Okay? So this is the div, name and the value pair. That's what we say. All attribute comes in names and value pairs. Class and the value is my first. And you have the contents inserted here. Close your div into the div tag. Right? Apart from this, you also can have another attribute called the ID attribute. Now, the ID attribute, div, ID, okay. ID can be my first again. ID can be my first again. So first of all, you have the class, my first, and then you have the div with an ID of my first. So when you have all these things, all of these things are called attributes, and they give more information about the HTML document or the HTML element. Now we are going to move to HTML styles. HTML styles. Let us look at how styles can be used in HTML styles. HTML style. Alright. Now, styles are used to beautify the HTML content. Alright? Styles are used to beautify the HTML content of the document. Styles are used to beautify it. So when you want to beautify your HTML, take for instance, you want to give it the background color, a text color, a font size. We use HTML styles attributes in achieving that. How do we do that? HTML styles attribute comes in this format. You have a style because property column value. Alright, you have it in this format. The style equals property column value. Now, HTML styles work with what we call CSS. HTML styles work with what we call CSS. And CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheet. Right? You check my next tutorials for CSS. We're going to talk about CSS in the next video. Now, looking at style attributes. Alright, looking at style attributes, the property you have here is a CSS property, and the value is also a CSS value. For example, I want to give my font a color. So how do we do that? Style is equal font, color red. Okay. Now give your style color red. This is attached to an element, for example, a paragraph element. Remember we said attributes should be always applied in the opening tag of any HTML element. Style color red. You have style color red attached to the paragraph element. Then you have the content here, you close the paragraph element. And by the time you load this on the web browser, discover that with this is the property. Alright, this is a property, color is a property, the color property and the red value. So I think you can alter the value you have here to blue. You can alter the value to green. You can alter the value to any color of your choice using the local color names, and you can also get the results. Now, so still dwelling on colors, apart from using the local color names like green, red, blue, purple, indigo, violet, orange, you can also use color values that has to do with hexadecimal color values or RGB color values. Okay, the decimal color values or the RGB color values. The RGB color values here stands for red, green, and blue color values, while the hexadecimal color values stands for color values with 16 digits. Well, not quite 16 digits, but we talk about hexadecimal, we're talking about 16. Alright, so decimal, of course, you know decimal ranges from 0 to 9, while hexadecimal ranges from 0 to 16. Alright, we have 0 to 9. Every time you continue from A, B, C, D, E, and F. So F is the highest color value under the hexadecimal color value range. So when you talk about hexadecimal color values, like for instance, you want to call a color, how do you do that? You reference it using hash. So once you have hash 6, okay, 426670. All right, hash 426670. So hexadecimal color values are 6 in number. If you count it, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Right? There's 6 in number for it to function properly. 426670. Or it comes in this style: hash RRGGBB, red, green, and blue. All right, which are the original colors for your computer system, which are the color combinations every computer screen uses. Hash RRGGBB. Okay, so RRGGBB. Now, when we're working with the hexadecimal, it's going to come back here and look at it. Which color values have the highest here? All right, because in hexadecimal, the higher you go, the higher the strength of the color. So, which means 0 is greater than 1, is less than 1, 1 is less than 2, 2 is less than 3, 3 is less than 4, 4 is less than 5, 5 is less than 6, 6 is less than 7, 7 is less than 8, 8 less than 9, 9 less than A less than B, B less than C, C less than D, D less than E, and E less than what? F. So F is the highest, while 0 is the what? The lowest color value. So from this color combination, you discover that you have 426670. Okay. Now let's calculate and see which of the colors will come out, which of the color shades will be the greatest. So from our range 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, A, B, C, D, E, and F. We're going to look at which color value comes the highest. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Right. So 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16, which is the highest color. Now, 0 is represented as 1, 1 is represented as 2, 2 is represented as 3, 3 is represented as 4, 4 represented as 5, 5 as 6, 7 as 6 as 7, 7 as 8, 8 as 9, 9 as 10, A as 11, B as 12, C as 13, D as 14, E as 15, and F as 16. So we have 426670. 4, so we have the 4 digits, you have 5, this is 5 plus 2, which is 3. 5 plus 3 as this. So 5 plus 3 will give you 8. The second one, 6 plus 6, which is 7 plus 7. 7 plus 7 is 14. Second one is 14. And red, 7 plus 0. 7 is 8, 0 is 1, which is 9. Okay, so you have red coming as 8, green coming as 14, and blue coming as what? 9, 8. Okay, so it therefore means that when you have 6, 6 will be the highest color shade, green will be the highest color shade, and this particular text is going to have green as its color. So it's going to be a shade of green. Thank you very much for listening to me. See you.